Hey gang, welcome back. It is I, DrBossKey, and today we helped out a community member with a question they had about the camera, and then I realized that sometimes you can do more complicated setups, and it's not easy to understand what's going on. So Magna Remora, thank you very much for the question. And so the answer is here, for instance, let's just say that this is the boss monster. Put the boss monster out here. So there's a couple things going on here. So one is you should know how your camera works. So if you go into your camera settings, you will have a, is it here? What's it there? You have a wake zone. All right. So the inner zone, the orange area, this is what the camera sees. This is what's on screen for the player. And then this area outside of the orange zone, in our case, is what we call the wake field. So, and this is when the camera sees an enemy, it will, or logic, it will wake up that enemy and that logic before it appears on screen. So you have this object here. The object is called your camera effects object. It's right here. So at its very simplest form, you can modify the camera speed. Make sure you check that. And then you want to, in our case, we want the camera to stop. So we set the new speed to 0. And then we want a transition time, in this case for us, 6 seconds. Could be, I usually like very quick, abrupt stops, but this is easier to show this way. All right. So you're in perspective mode. You drop this here, and we know that, that once the camera, sees the camera effects object, it's going to start to affect the camera. So with the space bar in perspective mode, you can see that it's active now, and then eventually the camera comes to a complete stop. Cool, right? So now that we know where the camera has a complete stop at, you take a little note here, just like a mental note, right? And we know that's right about here. So we're going to take our boss guy, and we're going to put him right about here, right? And in this case, I think that the boss is too close to the camera edge, right? So you can see it there. It's not terrible. Actually, kind of worried. Let's see here. Let's take a look at runtime. Yeah, so I want the boss to be a little bit further in, so we'll just pull the boss in a little bit further. Because when the camera stops, we want to be able to have the boss and all of the boss's shards, all these guys here, all on screen. So, and that's still a little bit, let's do that. All right, one more time. There we go. I think that feels pretty good there. So now we got ourselves a boss here. Okay, cool. So a little thing to know though, right, is that if you have a larger wake field, I forget what the default is, but if you have a larger wake field, then you have some timing between when the enemies become awake, when logic starts to appear, and also where your bosses end up, right? So if you take the camera and you start it here, where this element, the camera effects element, is already inside the wake field, then what's going to happen is it's going to start and then start counting down. So your camera will be further in than it would normally. So whenever you're tuning like a boss camera, you always want to make sure, so for instance here, right? So you can see, because it takes 6 seconds to get to 0 for us, now the boss is much further in. And if you're building gameplay logic and things like that, where things position on screen is really important, right? So always make sure that your camera is outside of your camera effects object. So then it always comes to the same complete stop in the same position. Otherwise, you'll run into issues. Small little pro tip. I think that's all the main things. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments section, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.